Back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Ric Serritella, telling like it is when it comes to your 13-2 Philadelphia Eagles here on the Football Playbook. Buckle up, smash that like button. It's all brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts down there in Atlantic City. And we will be down at the Ocean maybe this Sunday after the tailgate takeover, parking lot G. It's all going down, and maybe we'll run into Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire USA Today here on this Wednesday, December 28th, joining us right now. Tone, hopefully the audio is better on my end. And Glenn, good morning. How are we doing today?
Rick, how you doing? Good morning.
Doing good. Hopefully the holidays are treating you better than the Philadelphia Eagles and their fans here. A lot of bickering in the chat room. The Cowboys are reveling and basking in the glory. And it looks like there could be a round 3 simmering on the back burner. Now, you tell me what your takeaway was from this Cowboys game, because I really thought the Eagles were a better team. Even with Gardner Minshew, I expected them to pull out the W, but after watching that game, knowing that Lane Johnson is now injured, knowing that Avonte Maddox is out for the regular season, and knowing that Jalen Hurts might not be the same quarterback, I kind of have to reevaluate whether I thought the Cowboys were pretenders. I think now that they are very well contenders. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a whole bunch of goalposts moving. The same things we talked about before. When the Cowboys lost the first game, they were without their starting quarterback. Nobody made a big deal of it. The Eagles go to Dallas. They play really well. They do the same thing they did in Washington in terms of the turnovers, fumbling the game away. They still had a chance to win the game in the end. And now, everything's falling. So I think it's a loss. We talked about it before. They'll probably play again. I'd rather split in the regular season, win the third one, than win 2 straight and somehow lose in the playoffs. So everything will be okay. They'll figure it out. That's where that offensive line that comes in. That's why we talk about Jeff Stoutland all the time. So things will work out.
Well, we'll get into the offense, but will they figure it out on defense? Because I know Dak Prescott shredded the zone coverage 24 out of 24. That 3rd and 30 is like a season-defining moment, possibly. If the Cowboys do go on a run, they're going to go back to that T.Y. Hilton catch as the turning point of their season. It was that kind of party, and there was miscommunication there. Again, in the secondary, Darius Slay, his play has fallen here in the second half. What the heck is going on back there?
Somewhat, I think, again, we talk about Avonte Maddox, how important he is, and I think you're starting to see it. When he's in the game, they can do the kind of things they want to do on the outside. They can play man, they can play man zone concepts, they can do whatever they want. Once he leaves the game, things change. It's a lot more zone and things of that nature. I think the play with Slay, and I could be wrong, I played beat defensive back, but I felt like he was baiting Prescott, and I think if Gardner Johnson's in that game, he intercepts it or he breaks the pass up. So I think from that standpoint, his play has dipped some. It was a bad play, but I think that's more on Josiah Scott than the Pro Bowl cornerback. But that's just me.
Yeah, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was not in there. He's out with a lacerated kidney. We don't know what the CAT scan is going to say this week. We don't know if he's going to be activated. Let's just assume that he's not going to play, Glenn. Josiah Scott's kind of been a roller coaster ride. And when Chauncey does come back, he could maybe play the slot. But just for this Saints game this upcoming week, will it be Reed Blankenship and Marcus Epps at safety with Kayvon Wallace in the slot? Is that what we're about to see on this Sunday?
I would try it. I mean, I think without Maddox in the game, you're going to play more zone anyway. So I think at worst, you'll get an active Kayvon Wallace, a high motor. If he's going to make a mistake, he's going to make that mistake, going full go. So I would try a litany of things. I would try several things. So I think you'll still have to go with Scott at some points. But if Gardner Johnson can't return, then I would play Kayvon Wallace more in the box, see what we can get there, play more zone, get the communication under control. And I think things are fine. You still had 6 sacks. You still were strong up front. You just got to fix the back end.
It's interesting. Former Eagles cornerback Craven LeBlanc, I saw tweeted out that he was 100% healthy, ready to go, can help a team. Maybe a plug-and-play guy. Is he worth kicking the tires on? Have you heard anything in terms of Philadelphia being interested at all? What are your thoughts?
I haven't heard anything, but I made a listing of players that could possibly fill that role, and he was at the top of it. He was the pitcher we used for the post. So in terms of knowing the city, knowing some of the coverages, knowing the scheme, I'd bring him in for the stretch run, but I haven't heard anything. We'll see. But he's a worthy candidate, and I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to kick the tires, sign him to the practice squad, see what you got there. I know they brought in a tight end yesterday. We'll get to the offense in a second, but you mentioned the pass rush. I mean, they're about to surpass the 85 Bears for the most sacks. If they can pull it off again, I think they need 12 sacks. And you say, hey, that's a lot of sacks, but they've been getting them in bunches. Clearly the best defensive line in Eagles history, I want to say.
They've been solid up front. They've been solid against the run. That's not really the issue. I think, we can get better play in the passing game from the linebackers in the secondary. But in terms of the defensive front, Gannon has done an outstanding job of rotating guys, keeping guys fresh, allowing Josh Sweat to flourish, things like that. So it's a solid group, and I can only expect them to play better as the postseason and the regular season winds down.
We're talking about bringing in these defensive guys and some of them off the street, like Ndamukong Suh. Slay came over from Detroit. I saw, he kind of was pointing fingers after the game. Slay was. Suh put out a tweet yesterday like, hey, I can't wait to meet up with my boys out in Arizona. The Eagles core guys like Brandon Graham and the leadership guys talk about the standard and the culture that they've created. You got any problems with Suh putting that stuff out there or Slay kind of pointing fingers? It seems not to be what Sirianni preaches from the top on down.
I mean, it's a tight-knit group. I think you have a situation where you have some guys getting a little bit more stardom fame. Slay has a podcast. So there are certain things going on. But I think from the standpoint of the core guys, Slay was brought in, Suh was signed. So they're not necessarily core guys. Slay is a captain. His play has been excellent this season, but I think it's a situation that they'll work out. They have the roster, they had the Fletcher Coxes, the Kelseys, Jalen Hurts. So I think there are enough positive personalities, strong personalities for this not to get out of hand. I think it was a bad loss. They'll figure it out.
But, you say Slay's a captain. If he's got a problem with somebody in the locker room, shouldn't he go talk to him mano a mano and not air it out to the media? Like, to me, that's the problem I have with it.
For sure, but you also know we live in a new day and age with social media, clicks, likes, and things of that nature. So things are signed. He may have done that and still have taken it to social media. Who knows?
Yeah, I try to understand it, Glenn. We're talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today here on the Football Playbook each and every Wednesday, by the way, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Buckle up, double chin strap affair. Somebody else who took to social media, shifting over to the offense now, is Miles Sanders. I saw him. He's out here, listen, you just fumbled for the second straight week. You're not having a great stretch run here. Why the heck are you on social media liking tweets and talking about, hey, I can't wait till we get a real running back and Josh Jacobs is coming in. Get out of here, Miles. And he's out here liking it. Like, what is Miles Sanders trying to accomplish with that?
I mean, he's in the contract year. Things could be frustrating. Just went over 1,000 yards. He just went over double-digit touchdowns. So you see a situation where a guy is going from 1,000+ yards to where in his mind, he maybe has left a few hundred yards on the field. He feels like he could have a 1,500 yard season. And that could be the difference between, when we talk free agency, the $12 million that Derrick Henry and those guys get and the $6 or $7 million that guys like Nyheim Hines and others are getting. So it's a stressful time for a lot of people. This team has a lot of free agents. So it's clearly a situation where he may not be back, and having 2 picks in the first round and the way we do running backs here, he may not have to be back. So it's a stressful time for everybody, and I think you're seeing that.
Yeah, I think he might be playing and talking his way out of Philadelphia. I don't see them giving him $10 million a year to return to Philly with all the other pending free agents. Let me ask you this then. We saw Kenneth Gainwell kind of get an increase in touches. Do you anticipate a bigger role for Gainwell and Scott here down the stretch?
Definitely Gainwell. I think, in terms of the usage rates, they had the same amount of snaps. Sanders had more carries. Gainwell had more touches in the passing game. So we'll see this week. We'll see in the season finale. But he is the better, he's the better pass catcher of the two. He's the more shiftier of the two. So it's not that far of a drop off, when the offensive line is going and things of that nature. So Miles has to be careful.
Before we get to Jalen, in terms of what his game status is, and we're just speculating, what were your thoughts and impressions from the Gardner Minshew performance, Glenn?
Wasn't that bad. I mean, we did the studs and duds for the week. I named him a stud. I mean, you don't want the 2 turnovers, but I mean, Quez Watkins, has to be tougher on those plays. He fames himself as the fastest guy in the league. Well, during those 2 plays, you got to be the most physical guy in the league. So yeah, he had a couple of turnovers, but he also threw for 355. He wants to be a starter, good footwork in the pocket. If he has to play, I have no doubt they could beat the Saints. So from a backup standpoint, no, he's not Hurts, but I'm comfortable going forward with him over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, $2.5 million Gardner Minshew is earning this season. He's probably another guy that could maybe earn himself a larger payday in free agency. Quez Watkins, you mentioned him, Glenn. I'm starting to believe, speed is such an alluring asset in the NFL. I mean, teams get fascinated over speed, but when you're a one-trick pony, my friend, you better be physical, like you said. And I'm starting to believe now Quez Watkins is the weakest link on this offense. Would you agree with that?
At moments, I mean, I don't understand why we don't see Pascal get more routes, but I think on those 2 plays, those 2 turnovers, he just has to be, if he's not going to, attack the footballs, stop the defender from getting the football, but you can't just let, 2 solid defensive backs look all world and taking the ball away from you.
Yeah, I'd like to see Pascal maybe injected a little bit more into the equation. You saw him get some reps, I think, when Dallas Goedert was down. And Goddard, by the way, only had 3 targets. He caught all 3 of them. And I see they brought in Blake Jarwin, the former Dallas Cowboys tight end, who, can do a little bit of everything. Not a terrible pass catcher. Pretty good blocker before that ACL injury. What's your thought here? I know Tyree Jackson is out, but I didn't think that was a significant loss. Are they just exploring better depth? Would Jarwin be an upgrade over Stoll or Calcaterra? I didn't quite see it that way. Why are they bringing in Blake Jarwin? And make it make sense, Glenn.
Well, I know they tried to take him off the Cowboys practice squad a few years ago, but I think in terms of with Lane Johnson's injury, you're likely going to see more 2 and 3 tight end sets, like all 3 tight ends on the field at the same time. So I think in terms of his blocking ability, he can be an upgrade over the rookie Calcaterra. So he's a solid pass catcher as it is. So from that standpoint, they're about equal. When you throw in his blocking ability and his veteran presence, that becomes a situation where if he's healthy, you can add him to the roster. And now that becomes a situation where you can help Driscoll or whoever you put at right tackle on that side.
No doubt. Makes sense to me. I'm buying what you're selling there. How about the wide receivers now? We could talk about a bright spot because A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, I mean, these guys are electrifying. I don't know who the true number 1 is, but I'll tell you what, these guys, I mean, this is as good as it gets in terms of a 1-2 combination. You'd have to really search. I think maybe Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle could maybe give them a run for the money, but man, they're right up there in terms of I was gonna say Batman and Robin, but I caught myself. Batman and Batman.
I mean, they're really talented. I think the funny thing comes in when Brown is the big play guy. Devontae Smith, for being such a small guy, is the more physical guy. So at times he's the swole Batman on the team. And I mean, I think last week he made a lot of tough catches. A lot of his catches were tough catches, sideline catches. He absorbs hits. So I think, watching them and how they play, Brown's the guy that gets to, the big plays, the yards after the catch. So it's an intriguing dynamic. But to have 2 guys over 1,000 yards, both could have 1,400, it's very entertaining.
Lastly, the offensive line, the other big question mark, we talked about Avonte Maddox in the secondary is going to leave some question marks. Lane Johnson, I said on the show yesterday, arguably just as big of a loss as a Jalen Hurts. I mean, this guy, talk about as good as it gets. He hasn't given up a sack or a pressure in 2 years. Shane Steichen was asked, does it impact the play calling? Will it change the offensive scheme at all? And he just said, we're going to do what we do. The question is, what is that offensive alignment going to look like? Is it just, hey, let's plug and play Driscoll, or will they kind of move and plug Dillard at left? We hear maybe Mulatto could slide back at right. I mean, how do you see this playing out?
I would go the first way you said it. Just plug Jack Driscoll in and go. I think, the last time Mulatto slid over, I think it was against the Panthers a couple of years ago. He struggled badly. He's one of the NFL's top left tackles. Leave him where he is. I think, like we said, if you need to add a tight end there or allow a running back to help and chip, Driscoll's a solid right tackle. He could play guard. So Sam Gurgens can slide out as well. You have options, but I think you leave Mailata where it is. You adjust more tight end sets and you go from there.
One question I did not hear asked, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. If Lane Johnson is out, would that impact how much you play Jalen Hurts this week?
I think whether it be this week or next week, you need to play him. Like, we talked about last week, you don't necessarily want him going a whole month without playing. So I think you play him, you adjust the scheme, you adjust the runs. You don't do the quarterback runs unless he has to run. You get him to slide. But at some point, he's going to have to play. Quarterbacks play banged up. Quarterbacks play with bad shoulders. Regardless of how it goes, he's going to have to play. But if Johnson can't go, then you play Driscoll. I think Driscoll played 3 games at right tackle last year. He did fine when Johnson was out with his personal situation. So we've been there. We've done it.
Ian Rappaport said, had the Eagles won against Dallas and wrapped up that number 1 seed, you probably wouldn't have seen Jalen Hurts this week. Now that they still have that number 1 seed dangling out there, it sounds like Jalen Hurts is going to give it a go to try and play. Typically, this was a 10 to 14 day type of injury where it's not going to heal. My understanding is he's not going to further injure it. It just becomes a pain tolerance. What is Jalen's threshold? And I do agree that he is a tough SOB. If it's up to Jalen, he's going to play. What do you think Ric Serritella ultimately decides to do?
I think you let the quarterback decide. I mean, he's an MVP candidate. He's another guy playing on a contract. If he feels like he's a $40-45 million a year guy, then like Aaron Rodgers and others would do, they would play. So you figure it out. You get your pain threshold out. You play. You get this win over with, and then we could talk about resting him. But regardless of the situation, you can't have him miss a month. Even if they had wrapped it up last week, then it's like, well, when does he play again? Then you get into that divisional matchup. If he struggles or if something goes wrong, we'll go back to he didn't play for a month. So let him play. He wants to be paid like one of the highest paid quarterbacks. That's what they do. That's what they get paid to do.
So no concerns then if you go to Jalen and say, yo, Jalen, buckle up, you ready to go? There's no concerns there that his competitiveness isn't going to get in the way of giving the team the best chance to win. In other words, if he's not feeling like he's going to be a positive impact, but his competitive juices are saying, hey, coach, I'm good to go. You're comfortable with that?
I mean, I think you have to be, because at some point you have to get this over with. If you somehow lose to the Saints, then you're talking about now you're playing important guys against the Giants. If you somehow lose to the Giants, then all the work you did this year, you're possibly on the road and you're not at home, and then it becomes a whole different ball game, a whole different topic of discussion. So regardless of the fact, if you can't go, then you plug Minshew in and you go. But if you can play, he needs to play. They need to win. They need to get this over with, and then we can figure out who plays and who doesn't in the finale.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. You mentioned the Giants. We'll get into this playoff picture, and the NFC East is really up for grabs mathematically. But the Saints are coming marching in, Glenn, and this is a team. They have not allowed 20 points since week 9. They ran the ball 40 times this past week and won a cold weather ball game. So we've seen that kind of formula. The Eagles have had struggles with that kind of concept. I'll tell you what, I see a team that, at quarterback, it's any given Sunday. It could be Taysom Hill. It could be Winston. We haven't seen him in a while. Dalton, last time out against the Eagles, he actually threw for like almost 400 yards. I'll tell you what, this is not a gimme kind of game that I thought it was a month ago.
No, the Saints are solid up front. They still have Kamara. They still have talented, skilled players. They're a team that's 6-9, one game out in the NFC South. They're a team that the Eagles have their first-round pick, so what better way than to go and upset the Eagles, make that pick drop some more so that they have reasons to play. The coaching staff could be potentially playing for their jobs. So there's a reason. You have Cam Jordan up front. You have a talented linebacker crew. Lattimore may be back, so they have talent, and we need to win.
Yeah, I see their offensive line is picking up and playing good ball as well. 0 sacks allowed last week. They've only allowed 30 sacks on the season, which is a top 10 offensive line for the Saints there. So, I have not seen what the point spread is. Probably won't really know what it is until we get an update on Jalen Hurts. But Are you going to put the check mark in the left-hand column for the Eagles this week? What's the prediction from Glenn?
Without a doubt, Rick. I think that they need to win. I think there's a sense of urgency there. I think you have some pissed off guys on both sides of the football. Some guys that are a bit embarrassed, so they need to get away from the Pro Bowl stuff, the All Pro stuff. They're not 13-1 anymore. They're not undefeated anymore. They're a game away from being just like everyone else. So I think they need to come out. I think they'll come out, make a statement, win, get their number one overall seed, get their rest, and we can talk about the postseason.
And help out their draft positioning in the process, right? They own the Saints pick. It's currently number 10. And, beating the Saints will also help that draft stock. It'll help clinch the first-round seed. And I don't think Ric Serritella wants to go into that Giants game with the number 1 seed and the division. Like, if the Cowboys take care of business against the Titans tomorrow night, which I think they will, and the Eagles were to lose to the Saints, wow, things could get real interesting against the Giants in that final week of the season, huh?
I mean, they have their own clinching scenario, so you don't want a situation where they need to win in Week 18 to either clinch or upgrade their potential positioning. So I think they need to get things done this week. If you don't, then you're talking about a pressurized situation, a game that's likely to be flexed to prime time, and who knows what'll happen. A rivalry game, some hard feelings from 2 or 3 years ago when the Eagles allowed Washington to get in the playoffs. So there's a lot of emotion there. There's a lot that could be sitting there if they don't get things done this weekend.
All right, last one for you. As we sit here today, Glenn, Wednesday, December 28th, with the current status of all the players on the 49ers and the Eagles, you take it all into account. They're going to play tomorrow. Who is the best team, do you think, right here, right now?
So we're including Deebo Samuel not being in the lineup.
I guess so, right? I thought he might come back this week, but I'm not sure. So I guess not.
With the way the teams are right now, I give the 49ers the edge on a neutral field just because of their defense and how consistent they've been defensively all year.
I appreciate the honesty. With a fourth string quarterback, it's hard to disagree, though. It's just amazing what the 49ers have built here to be able to get it done with Brock Purdy. I mean, I give this team a shot. I really do. So we shall see. What do you got cooking on the Eagles Newswire over there at SI.com? Make sure you go check out Glenn at Eagles Newswire, at Cover 2 Podcast. Give us the handle. Give us the website. Let us know all the great content you got flowing out there, Glenn.
Like we just talked about, a big week trying to get updated on these injury situations. So we'll be monitoring Maddox. We'll be monitoring Lane Johnson. We'll definitely be monitoring Jalen Hurts, the Saints. You can catch all my work at the Eagles Wire at usatoday.com, the Cover 2 NFL, the Cover 2 Podcast soon to come. And here with you, Rick. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Always enjoy the Wednesdays, and we'll do it again next week. See where the cookies crumble, my friend.
You guys have a happy New Year if I don't speak to you before then.
Yes, happy New Year. That's Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. And we're just getting started here on the Football Playbook. An hour of power down, an hour of power to go. Tone DeShields, the second, holding it down. The producer, Tone. Appreciate you. We're going to